Ale, ale, ale. Ale, ale, ale. Ale, ale, ale. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Chef United Way live video. Now, today we're going to be talking about our first, I would say, proper Sheffield United signing of the 25-26 season. It's going to take some getting used to that, but we are more than here for it. And it's a player called Tyler Bindon from Nottingham Forest on loan. And I'll be honest, I've not seen Tyler play too much professional football, shall we say. And do you know what, Ollie? I feel like he's the first Tyler we've ever signed. Am I right?
Oh, that's a question. What about Tyler Smith? Centre forward. We had him for a bit.
Technically, I suppose we did sign him. I'm going to say technically we never signed him, but we did. He signed on the dotted line. Oh, thanks, mate. Thank you for that.
Straight in. That's what we like. Get it up him early. Just test him with a quick one.
I actually sat in front of him for the Nottingham Forest second leg in the playoffs. That crazy penalty shootout game. Him and Karen Gordon were right behind me, but yeah, obviously. Clearly. Yeah. Anyway, so I just want to ask you first and foremost, Ollie, what is the first thing you thought? What were your feelings when you first heard that we'd signed Tyler Bindon? Because this one is not one that's really been leaked, has it?
No, absolutely came out of nowhere. And actually, it's quite refreshing that for the first time in who knows how long it's been, we can sit here and go, I genuinely didn't know anything about it. Didn't know who the player was. There were no rumours. There'd been nothing leaked. Nixon wasn't tweeting about it. Literally just out of nowhere, a player. And so I was very much caught off guard by it. And then I was a bit excited because I think it took me a little while to think about, how's he going to fit in? What's he going to bring to the team? How are we going to start to sort of integrate him in? It's a bit of a shame he's alone, admittedly. I would have liked us, I can see it coming up on some of our comments here. I would have liked us to go out and permanently bring somebody in and make sure that we're building a squad for Sheffield United for the long term. However, if he's a player who will start every game, if he's a player who improves the level of the squad, then I'm all for it. And hopefully it sounds as though he's a very exciting player with a very exciting future.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have to keep playing devil's advocate in this one because we don't want to be too happy-clappy and we don't want to be too negative. I don't know who's going to play good cop, bad cop, but we'll figure it out as we go along.
Yeah, we'll take it in turns. You'll be bad cop sometimes. I'll be bad cop sometimes. I'm used to being negative. It's fine. I'll chuck them out there. This guy's going to be rubbish. No.
I'm trying to work out which one you are because I think I'm a realist and I think most people will probably say that by themselves. Hal's definitely slightly more on the happy clapper side. I don't think he likes me to say that, but he definitely is. Which side of the fence do you lean on?
I'm a real United fan, Nick. That's where I am. No, it's
and the Sean Dyche impersonator.
Yes, apparently so. No, you take it as you see it, don't you? And I think it's very much a case of just trying to represent, the honest feeling of where you see these signings as being. And I think usually there is a little bit of both sides. I think I do skew towards the pessimism and it's all just going to go wrong. Because that's naturally, I do it in all walks of life. Ask my wife, it drives her insane. But, for the most part,
you don't wrong, though. You are definitely a little bit like that. I have noticed that. And you've got no reason to be because you're a fantastic person. Anyway, let's talk about Tyler Bindon. So, 20 years old, mate. 20. So we've got a centre-back of 20 years old that's hopefully going to be seen as to promotion. That's firstly a tiny worry because I think a lot of fans, as I think it's Ryan put in the comments, not Ryan, sorry, trying to find it. It's going to take a while. There we go. Jimmy Civil has put in the comments about us possibly buying Rob Holding, which is on the opposite end. That's very much a lot of experience in there. And obviously, we knew him from last season, didn't know him quite well enough from last season. But I think fans expected a little bit more experience than a 20-year-old lad that's only played sort of 60, 70 games in League One as well. So that's something we're going to talk about. But height 6'3". So just to put that into perspective, Anel is 6'5", and Jack Robinson is 5'11". So I think 6'3" a half decent height for a man. As a
you know what?
I
am not having that Anel's 6'5". I realise that he is, and I get that, but I'm not having that Anel's 6'5". He plays like a 5'10".
Wowzers. Anyway, so we'll have to see when they come up against each other, or come up playing with each other. So he's obviously a Kiwi. He is a Kiwi, and that's what you call him. He's a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand originally. He moved to California when he was 12 years old, when his mother got a job coaching at UCLA. I've never said UCLA on this channel before, but she's So he went to America, played for LAFC. I think that shows how young he is, because I'm sure LAFC haven't been around that long, have they?
I think they were newly formed. I think while he was with them, if I'm getting my years right, I think he joined them when they only had a youth academy. They weren't a full team, just a youth academy. And then he was still with them when they developed their professional team in the MLS.
Incredible. He was born in 2005 as well, which is crazy to me. I know you're a little bit younger than me, but 2005 is just ridiculous. I think couple of years before I finished, after I finished secondary school. So that shows how young he is. And
he wasn't alive for the triple assault, Nick. That's the big one. He wasn't alive for the triple assault.
That's incredible. So he was one when we got promoted to the Premier League with Neil Warnock. That's just, Anyway, we're going to stop talking about
two old men complain about youngsters.
How dare he be so young? I'm definitely not jealous at all. Anyway, so back onto his career, and apparently people said that he didn't get offered a contract with LAFC, but that might have something to do with what you were saying about them not having a proper team and things like that. So he came to England to, go on trials and search for a club, which he found a club in Reading. He spent 6 months training with them, as Didsy would say on our podcast that we did. Chris Wilder used to call it training, not trials, training, because it's like, trials just has a little bit more pressure on it, doesn't it? But he clearly ate pressure for breakfast, because he ended up playing for Reading, signing for Reading on the dotted line, and, his first season, he played 40-odd games, didn't he?
Yeah, jump straight in, It's incredible to see, You don't see it very often. 18-year-olds who've just had 6 months worth of a trial, not played English football, not come through any English youth or development system. They go straight into the first team. I think he was their runner-up in their player of the season that year as well. It seems as though they knew immediately they got a really special talent on their hands and fast-tracked him through their squad as much as possible. I think as well he captained them during his first season, or maybe the year after. But, this is an 18, 19-year-old lad who's been a captain for a team in League One, who's played almost every game from the moment he arrived in the country, which is pretty insane. So, really impressive sort of breakthrough season from him, the way that he's gone straight into what at the time was an absolutely sort of chaotic Reading team. It takes on the mental side, it takes some strength to be able to go into the environment that has been Reading for the last 2, 3, 4 years and not just play, but thrive there. That speaks a lot to me that this is a lad who's got a really good head on his shoulders, and he's a really mature young man ready to develop himself into a really good professional.
Yeah, like we say, he's 20 years old now, and he's played 2 full seasons for Reading. Yes, it is in League One, as we mentioned earlier on. But they finished 17th in that crazy season in League One. I think a lot of us, when Reading went down, we think, you think of that Reading team from the Premier League with Marcus Hanneman and the Hunts and Doyle and these sorts of players. And you're thinking, how have they ended up in League One? And you think they just bounced straight back up, but they finished 17th. That season, as you've alluded to, the behind the scenes, it's a absolute basket case there. So 17th, it's a terrible season, but at the end of the day, you've got to take it in your stride of the fact that they were just like I said, a basket case. He was clearly bought by Forest, so they must have seen something in him. And obviously they're a Premier League team. So as where is he? There he is. As Ricky just put in the comments, Forest clearly feel like he's good enough for the Premier League, and they're fuming that he's been given this other loan. But it could be like a Dean Henderson, where you give him a loan in League One, you give them a loan in the Championship, and then they're ready for the Premier League. So that sounds good for us. It's just my worry is always I like a player to have that experience. But if they're old enough, they're good enough, aren't they, Ollie? So 20-year-old lad. He then went back on loan to Reading last season, and he won their Player of the Year. And I forgot to mention that he came second in their Player of the Year the season before. So Player of the Year last season, and then runner-up the season before. So it does show how good he has been for Reading.
Yeah, it's not a bad pedigree, is it? You've had 2 professional seasons, being runner-up and then player of the season. I think he was also in the top 3 for young player of the season in League One overall, just with Richard Kone and Louis Barry. So obviously he's got a lot of pedigree in terms of how his seasons have been over the last couple of years and the impact that he's had on a sort of, not just on Reading, but on League One as a whole, that he's getting that kind of sort of notice, and people are starting to think about this lad as a potential star of the future. I think one of the things that really stands out for me, we're talking about Forest and some of their fans saying they might want to see more of him. They might want to see him in their team. They're not a Premier League team. They're a Premier League team that are playing in Europe. They're a Europa League team at this moment in time. And so we're
don't
talking
say
about
these words. Stop saying these words about Forest. I don't like it.
There's a team that's in the Premier League that might be playing in Europe next season, and we've got a loan player from them. That's great. That is the kind of pedigree you want to be looking at. And if they're thinking he might be ready for that kind of step, that shows the level he's playing at. So hopefully, top end of the Championship is the perfect landing point for him to have an exceptional season with us, maybe continue his run, get another player of the season under his belt, and then attack the Premier League, whether that's with Forest or actually with us, because maybe this is the kind of loan that sets you up to bring these players in if you are then able to make that step and get promoted.
Yeah, absolutely. Doran Tor, also a YouTuber for Nottingham Forest. So if he says he's a good signing, then we've just got to believe him, haven't we? So thank you for jumping in, Doran Tor. I can't remember your name. Sorry about that. But if I say Doran Tor one more time, other people might subscribe. So yeah, go over there and check out his videos. So yeah, I am excited for this one. I really am. That puts us at 3 centre-backs that I would trust in Jack Robinson, Anel, and obviously now Tyler Bindon. He's played low. He's got the experience of. I think that having Jack Robinson in there is a must at the end of the day. I feel like he needs to be a backup, but I still want another centre-back. Do you?
Yeah, we need another centre-back. I quite like the profile of Bindon and Anel. I think that there's something there in terms of what Sellers is looking to do is he's going to want ball-playing centre-halves. We're not going to have a team where we've got oofers coming from the back. They're going to have to play a little bit. They're going to have to be able to welcome on a little bit of pressure. They're also going to be expected to be doing kind of long passing over the top. So I think we should expect to see quite a good passing range from Bindon. I think as a youth as well, we talked about him coming through at LAFC. He first came through as a central midfielder. He then moved out to being a right back. It's only actually when he went to Reading and had a growth spurt that he ended up being moved to centre half. So it also shows that he's got that ability to carry the ball and to maybe be a forward thinking defender. So I think we are going to be playing with ball players coming out of the back. And so I do quite like that, but we are missing still the Harry Souttar profile is what I'm going to call it. We still don't have, even here, a big, dominant, physical centre-half to handle some of the threats that we're going to come up against. We saw in games last season, the one that still stands out to me is when we came up against Colby Bishop and Portsmouth, where basically what he did was he just said, right, I'm going to back into Anel. I'm going to force him back towards his own goal. Who's going to be physical enough to stop me? I still don't think we've got that profile, so we still should be in the market for one more centre-half, somebody else to come in and give us that little option. We might want 2 ball players at times. We might need the physical option at times. Let's make sure we've got that adaptable sort of choice in the back. So I think we will be in the market for one more, but as a starting 2 for most of the games, I think we've got a really good pair there in Bindon and Anel that might be really good to watch as well.
Yeah, I think Harrison's absolutely bang on here. There's obviously Phillips from Spurs that has been heavily rumoured with Sheffield United, and we don't do videos on players unless we really think that there's a big chance. And Devine and Phillips were both heavily linked, and I'm sure they will continue to be heavily linked. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned is that Anel is into the last year of his contract too. So we might be looking to move him on. Not us, not me and Ollie. We like him. Sheffield United might
will personally see to it that we move him on in the last year of his contract. I'm just going to pick him up and I'm going to take him over.
I don't think you've got that. I don't think he might be a slender lad, but I don't think you've got that in your locker. You can't pick that lad up. But no, it could really happen. We could be looking at selling Anel, so we do need to bring in more players like that. We were talking off air, weren't we, about having 2 ball playing centre backs, and yeah, you obviously need ball playing centre backs in this day and age because that's the way football's going. And from the research we've done about Sayers, it looks like he's going to want to play out from the back, which most managers do these days. Even kind of Chris Wilder, everyone talking about Chris Wilder and being a bit more direct, but we played out from the back last season, maybe not as much as some other teams, but I think we will play out more from the back next season. But I do like a big, massive monster stopper next to a ball player. I think Anel's a fantastic ball playing defender, and like we said all last season, next to Suter, Anel is fantastic. But I don't feel like we're going to see Suter next season in a Blade shirt. So we need to find a Suter, replacement, don't we? A suitable Suter replacement, shall we say?
No.
Do you think Phillips could be that man, though? Think Phillips could be that man?
Yeah, I think Phillips could potentially be that man. Obviously, he's not quite as big. He is still, he's still a dominant physical presence. He's not as big as Suter. But I do think there'd be a decent option in there. Riff is just pointing out there that he's not got a fantastic aerial win percentage. But I think that's also going to be game dependent when you think about who he's going to be playing against. How are they going to be sort of approaching the games as well? He's most likely been playing. I know we're going to be in the Championship, so it is the most appropriate match. But I think we can probably try and play to his strengths. We're going to be possession dominant. There's going to be less pressure on him. And so it's probably more likely that the aerial battles he's going to be in, he's going to be up against the back of a striker, trying to force the ball away from goal rather than potentially challenging within his own box or sort of under repeated aerial pressure. So that might give him a better opportunity to get a better aerial win rate coming out of it. So I do think he'd be a really good option. I'm not sure that anybody, if we're being honest, is a suitable Suter replacement because it's just, he's such a hard player, such a hard profile to replace. But I think Phillips is the right profile that if we were bringing somebody in, he'd be a really good option to create a strong partnership with either Bindon or Anel, depending on who the first choice is going to be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the last thing we should really say on Bindon before we move on is what his actual strengths are. And I was watching a video of him, as you do on YouTube when you sign these players. He did look really good on the ball. He seemed like his concentration is right up there. He makes the right decisions. He's really good in the air. 6'3". He's not absolutely huge for a centre back, but it's a really good height for a centre back because bearing in mind Jack Robinson at 5'11", Jack Robinson still looks quite tall in real life, but 6'3" that's the sort of that's sort of high that you do want for a player like that. But it made me laugh because the video that I was watching, it said strengths, weaknesses. Weakness said he had 0 weaknesses apparently. No weaknesses whatsoever. So sounds like we've signed a £50 million centre back here on loan. So that's quite nice. But no, in all seriousness, I do like this signing. I really do. I've just not seen enough from him in games, so I'm excited by it. But like cautiously excited, shall we say?
Yes, I think that's a really good way of describing it. I think cautiously excited. What we have seen of Bindon is an outstanding young centre-half, still learning his game, but who has shown maturity beyond his years, who's shown himself to be a leader in a really difficult situation at Reading, but also who's shown himself to be a really talented footballer. This is a Reading team that, we talked about them being 17th that first season. That was despite, I think it was a 9-point deduction, despite being in transfer embargoes. That was what it was. Last season, they were 7th. And a lot of that improvement, when you listen to Reading fans or you see their comments about him, are on the back of him being outstanding in his position. They were a really strong defensive team, and he's had a huge impact on that. So I think we are getting somebody who is on the up in his career. I think we'll see him develop through the season. He might start in August and he might have a couple of moments. I think by next June, we'll be talking about a player who is guaranteed to be a Premier League starter for somebody, because I think he's really exciting. I think there's a big future there. And I think there's a huge upside to if this move goes right. I think the only, there's a tentative of he's never played at the level before. So he might have a little bit of time where he's got to learn that. He's got to feel it and sort of see how he fits in the Championship, and particularly at the top of the Championship. And the second part is that if it goes as well as it could, the problem is that he's not our player at the end of it, which is always disappointing. But that's the game you have to play when you want to bring in these players. You've got to use the loan system. And hopefully this is a sign that we're trying to use it a little bit better than we did last season. Because I think one of the criticisms last year was our loans just really weren't good enough to make the impact that we needed.
I think the fact that recent history tells us that Forest sign a lot of players, and a lot of these players don't actually make it at Forest, and that's a massive shame for them. And I suppose it depends how well they do in Europe, because we've seen it with Burnley where they've got into Europe and then ended up getting relegated a couple of. I don't know if it was the same season as the year that they were in Europe or if it was the season after, but it takes a toll on you. And you're playing a lot of games of football. Obviously, they've got a lot of players because they signed 400 players the other season. But Tyler Bindon, for instance, like you said, he is on loan, but he is somebody that we could end up signing. The thing is, they've only just signed him, so they're not going to sell him on straight away. But you never know. If we got promoted, for instance, they might loan him back to us in the Premier League, even though it's in the same league. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see, and eventually we might end up signing him. But right now, he's certainly not a European player. You wouldn't have thought, without seeing him play, you wouldn't have thought he'd be able to do that step up with some of the great players that they've got at the back for them at this moment in time. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on, we mentioned this right at the start, didn't we, Ollie, that what Harrison's saying, it's great to see, getting that excitement back for players, because we were so used to them being talked about for weeks. And it's almost like a relief when you finally see him through the door. For instance, with Harrison Burrows, that went on forever. Michael Cooper even went on for quite a while. They all seem to drag their feet, and we end up thinking, are we going to actually get this player? So it's nice to see it all kind of signed, sealed, delivered really, really quickly. But I'm glad that it didn't happen that way with Vinny Souza. And this is a segue into talking about Vinny, because if we'd have just seen the day before that Vinny Souza might be leaving and then he's gone, I'd have been devastated. But the fact that rumblings have been going on, it's been said for like a week that he will be leaving, I think it gives us that little bit of time to just, get our heads around it, because we're all going to miss Vinny Souza. Believe it or not, when I saw what Vinny Souza put on social media, I was sad, but I was just kind of like, let's just kind of move on. Let's figure out who we're going to have to replace him, because we might not even replace him like for like. We don't know yet, because we've got a really good midfield. But I think, is it Berger from Stoke City, who looks like he could fit that sort of mould?
Yeah, I love that. I love Wouter Berger. I think he's a fantastic footballer. I think he's one of those players who's just perfectly ready to step up. He's been in a Stoke team that have really struggled, but he's been their standout prospect, really, when you look at how they've built their team over the last couple of seasons. So I think if he was an option and we were able to bring him in, I think that's a fantastic move for United. I think it gives us a young asset who's somebody who can develop with the squad. I think with Souza, I'm gutted to see him leave. I think at Championship level, he's one of the best players in the division, and it's really difficult to replace that kind of talent and that kind of profile that you get in there. But, let's try and take off some of the recency bias. Let's think back 12 months, and actually he'd sacked it in. He'd given up his time at United. His Premier League season was as close to being atrocious as you could ever picture. And so I think that's why I'm not as gutted as maybe as I have been in the past. There are players that have left United where I've been sat there ready my hands for days thinking, oh God, what are we going to do? Whereas this time my first thought was, okay, who's coming in next? And I think that's because I know that if we were to get promoted, if we do step up, he's not the player who's going to take us to that next level. And so let's find the next one off the rank who could be the player who helps us reach that next level. My real disappointment is I don't think we got enough money. I think we should have been paid a little bit more, but who am I to negotiate? Nobody asks me, and I'm not good with money anyway.
No, I did wonder that. I wonder if Prince Abdullah would have got a little bit more from him. And I know a lot of people will be saying, "Oh, Illiman, we only got 15. We only got 15 for Sander," but they were in the last year of the contract. Sousa wasn't. So, yeah, I would have liked to have seen us get more for him. But I don't actually think we paid as much as what I remember as paying for Sousa. I think it was around the same amount. But why do we never make money on players? And then people talking about Harmer going off and 15 million. It's like, no. Like, if you're going to sell your best player who won player of the year last season, you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket. And no one wants to see us lose Harmer. But at the same time, like, it's football. If that happens, we need to make sure we don't get done over for it. But
it's the way football is. The players can leave, but you've got to maximise the profit you make out of the player leaving. Can you replace Gustavo Harmer for 15 million quid? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you need more money for him. And I think particularly, you look at the profile of other players leaving the Championship. I think about, what did Bristol City get for Alex Scott a couple of years ago? Around £15 million. Is Alex Scott and Gus Harmer comparable? No. We want more money because we're selling the finished article, somebody who we know is ready to step up. His numbers in the Championship in terms of goals in the Premier League, when we were there last season, he was in one of the worst Premier League teams of all time, and his goals and assist stats were really strong. I think he ended up in double figures. You've got to be talking about lots of money to get that kind of player out of Bramall Lane, and we shouldn't be expecting us to sell on the cheap. We should not be doing that. And so as a player, we will miss Vinny Sousa, and I'm gutted to see him go, but I think he's replaceable. The bit where I'm not sure is, why have we not maximised the profit that we're getting out of that? We're talking about the AI model. We're talking about wanting to be Brentford, wanting to be Brighton. Well, the one thing that Brentford and Brighton do and have done consistently for the last 10 years is when they've got an asset, they maximise the value of it. They don't sell Ollie Watkins for 10 million. They sell him for 40. And that's the difference that we've got to make if we want to make the jump that they're talking about.
I know it's all relative because we are in the Championship, and Brentford sold Watkins when they were in the Premier League, and he'd always did they? They did, didn't they? No, they didn't. Oh my God! I was just thinking we nearly bought him, didn't we?
Yeah, they sold him for about 25 million in the Championship.
Yeah, crazy. I do feel like that used to be the going rate. It used to be around 15 to 20 million, and then it just kept going up and up. And Archie Gray and Somerville and these sorts of players that was selling for a lot more. It's just like, the Championship is a feeder league for the Premier League, obviously. But the with inflation, everything goes up, doesn't it? So I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on about Bindon before we finish this video off is the fact that we mentioned it off air. It's nice to see us bring in a player that isn't the AI model, and everybody. I reckon 50% of Sheffield United fans before we signed Bindon were thinking every player that we're going to come through the door is going to be from the Bulgarian league. So it's nice to just clarify that we will be signing players that have played in the English pyramid already. Yes, he's played in League One, and I would have liked to have played at least a bit of Championship football or Premier League football. But I quite like us getting players from that have played in a lower league because we've had it so many times with Chris Wilder.
Yeah, it's exactly what we did last summer. You look at some of the success stories that came out of last summer. Now, the difference here is that this is a loan. And again, we have to emphasise that point because that is the only bit that takes shine off it when you compare to the others. But Burrows, a young player, nominated for Player of the Season in League One, stepped up, one of our best players. Michael Cooper, few seasons in League One where he's been an outstanding player. He's then had a couple of seasons in the Championship, albeit blighted by injury. We've then brought him in. We are working on that same model of finding young players coming through the EFL, bringing them into the club so that we can help them to develop and hopefully build assets out of them. Now, the difference today is that we're not building an asset in Bindon. We're building it for somebody else. But it does feel a bit familiar. I do think there's a really fun irony in it all, though, in that we've had so much focus on the AI model and we've talked about Chris Wilder leaving. And the big thing was he won't work with the AI model. He wants players he knows. And the first signing we've made after he's gone is a player that Sellers knows. It's a real irony in how we've done our business.
Yeah, the other the Hull City fan that we had on the channel the other week, he mentioned about Gellard as well, whether we were going to go in for him. I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't hate it, but yeah, we might end up seeing another Reading player another Hull player coming through the door. But that's just football, isn't it? It's just players that you trust.
Yeah, exactly. And once you know they're one of the big things United have built so much of our system on, and the big thing that Wilder worked on so much was attitude, was about making sure that we've got the right mentality in the group. Sellés might want a different mentality, but he'll still want the right one, and he'll want the leaders who are bought into his system. So, yeah, we might see 2 or 3 of those come in. We might see one come in. It might just be Bindon. But I do think that there's going to be, this gives us that message that the approach might be guided by AI in a lot of cases, but there's going to be common sense recruitment that comes in as well, and stuff like this just reassures us that that's going to be the case.
Absolutely. Lovely stuff. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I know Ollie's off to go to some very, very exciting event tonight. Do you want to give it a quick plug before you go?
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm off to Not the Top 20 Live. So they're playing at the Crucible Playhouse later on this afternoon. It's a big live show where they've got Billy Sharp and Ollie Arblaster as the special guests, doing kind of interviews with them and looking at the season just gone and the one ahead. Obviously, with Sheffield football at the minute, there's loads for them to talk about. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And if anybody else is going, I look forward to seeing you there. Yeah,
give him a shout. He always loves people coming up and shaking his hand and giving him a cuddle. Don't know why I said that. Anyway, enjoy yourself, Ollie, tonight. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll catch up with you very, very soon. Up the blades. Ollie, Ollie, Ollie.